Hello, everyone. So, Tekedra, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Before I ask you questions, I do want to ask the audience a few questions. And I'm wondering, just to raise a hand, you don't need to shout it out, how many have you ridden in a Waymo? A lot has changed since the last time that we spoke on stage in LA in February.
Yeah.
One more question. How many of you are using it regularly? So not just one. I see one person is very excited about this. Yes. And then have you made it your primary transit? Okay, fewer numbers, but definitely, okay, we're getting thumbs up and everything. Okay. You've got some super fans.
That's so great.
What about you? How often are you using the Waymo vehicles?
I use them every time I'm in one of our 5 cities. So if I'm in LA or Phoenix or Austin, Atlanta, or right here in San Francisco, then I'm using it.
You don't have a personal one just parked in your garage and ready to go?
I do not have a personal one parked in my garage, ready to go.
Ooh, I got a TechCrunch laugh. Yeah, I'm so excited. What about the competition? Have you ridden in Austin in the Tesla Robotaxi or a Zoox?
I have not.
Okay, they haven't invited you.
They have not.
Okay. We'll
More laughs. This is great.
I know, it never happens. So I do want to talk about scale. And since last time we spoke was February 2024 and it was Los Angeles, and a lot has changed. Today you're commercially in 5 cities: Phoenix, Los Angeles, the Bay Area, also Atlanta and Austin. And you've announced so far in 2026 6 more cities. Yeah. So that includes DC, Miami, Denver, Dallas, London, and
Seattle, Nashville.
Nashville? I didn't know about Seattle. Okay. Yeah. So what can we expect in 2026 beyond that? Is that it, or should we expect more?
So I think just to take a half a step back. So where we are right now is we're in these 5 cities. We've done over 10 million, what we refer to as RO rides, so fully autonomous rides. We're doing hundreds of thousands per week. And by the end of 2026, you should expect us to be offering 1 million trips per week. So that's the way to think about sort of the road from end of this year to end of next year. We've driven over 100 million RO miles, and we drive over 2 million RO miles per week in the fleet. So think of that as the average human drives about 700,000 miles in a lifetime. And so we're doing almost 3x every week in our fleet, which is really important when we talk about the capability of the Waymo driver. But anyway, so how to think about this. So expect Miami to come pretty early next year, and then a host of markets that you mentioned. Some of these cities are open from a regulatory perspective, so we'll just show up and we'll launch. Some cities we're still doing the work, laying the groundwork in order to be able to launch a fully autonomous service. So one of those cities that we're working with right now is Washington, D.C. We need to make sure that we can remove the human driver in order to actually have the kind of safety impact that we're focused on having. Same thing, we're extremely excited to be the first company to receive a permit to test in New York, but we also need the regulatory framework to remove the human driver from behind the wheel. So you're going to see a little bit of sort of us launching where we can launch, us testing where we can't yet launch, and then obviously us scaling. And the other thing that's happening is we have a fleet of cars in Tokyo, and we just announced that we'll have a fleet of cars in London.
Do you expect to launch commercially in Tokyo in 2026 as well? Because you've been there now for a few months.
Yeah, we've been there. We've been collecting data. We haven't really focused yet on exactly when we'll launch because, this is sort of our foundation is safety. And so what we need to do there's also a regulatory framework there that we're working out. We've partnered there with Neon Kotsu and Go in order to enter the market there. And so we're extraordinarily incremental in the way that we think about the steps needed in order to earn the trust that we feel like we sort of have to work for in order to make this exchange. So when we launch, you can have these kind of power riders like we just identified here. We want people to know who we are, how we operate, what the safety benefits are, and that they can actually trust us.
One of the other ways to scale is by freeways. And so at this point, I know that there have been testing on freeways. I actually was in one in Phoenix. When is that going to happen? And what market do you expect that to happen in first?
Yeah, so we are currently in SF, LA, as well as Phoenix testing freeways with employees.
Right.
And so we will continue to do that. We've had people at Waymo and people at Google all taking rides, giving us feedback. We think it's really important to conceptualize the ways in which that experience is different than surface streets. There's been no one that's sort of experienced sitting in the passenger seat or the back seat of a vehicle at 65 miles an hour. And so making sure we all understand what that experience should be like. And so by the end of this year and moving into next year, you'll see us start to open this up to the public, like all of our sort of services that we've launched over time.
What do you mean by contextualized experience? How is that different than, running around here in downtown SF? Is it just getting people comfortable with the speed, or is there something else?
I think, there's this funny thing that happens. So people who are super skeptical about autonomous vehicles or nervous or unfamiliar get in and they're like, wow, it's extremely safe and it's reliable. I get from point A to point B. I understood what happened. I think we just haven't gone on that journey yet at high speeds. And so even people who say to me, oh no, my car has the ability to drive me from exit to exit, they're still sitting behind the wheel. Mm-hmm. They're not sitting in the passenger seat or in the back seat. So it's just what you're asking me, that's what we're asking riders, right? That's what we're asking our Waymonauts, as we affectionately refer to our employees. What is that experience like? What are the things we haven't thought about that might be different? And because even in the early days, no matter what the city is, when we launch, we take you on a route that isn't the route you would drive yourself. Immediately, it's just like a recognition that this is a loss of control. Doesn't mean it's less safe, it's just not the way you would have driven yourself. Mm-hmm. And so imagine that in that scenario at a higher speed, what are the things that a rider, in our case, or employee feedback, will tell us that will allow us to become more intuitive in making that ride predictable and understandable to you.
Once you unlock the freeway piece, suddenly airports become a lot more accessible. And I know that you can, potentially get to these through surface streets, which is what is happening right now in Phoenix. Is that the key to then accelerating on unlocking each airport? I mean, is that the business strategy of Waymo?
I think so. We're super focused on airports, even independent of freeways, just because what is that regulatory path? What information do they need to see from us? So we're very focused on that. We have been able to receive our permit now for San Francisco Airport and San Jose Airport. So that's great. And as we have freeways, exactly what you said. Here, that's absolutely the case. There are more airports like Phoenix where we'll be able to access them without. But I think thinking of all of it as the ingredients to expand the service territory and meet more needs of more riders, and that's really what we're focused on doing.
So we talked about scale and acceleration, and back in April, it was about more than 250,000 miles a week. You've now indicated that by the end of 2026, 1 million rides per week. So what should we expect by 2027? I mean, by my count, you would be in 11 cities or so that you've announced. Is it going to be outsized among that? Are we going to be looking at like 2 million rides per week by 2027? I'm sure that there have been internal boardroom conversations about this. So
yeah, I'm not exactly sure where we'll be in terms of miles. I think the way to think about it is you will see us show up in a number of cities over the next 6 months. And in all of those cities, the reason we are there is because we intend to launch. Mm-hmm.
A big piece of being able to scale comes with money, and one of my favorite topics. And Waymo has raised more than $11 billion, I think $11.3 billion so far. So to be able to reach that 1 million rides per week, how much more do you need to raise?
I'm not going to get into the specifics about fundraising. I will, though, say obviously our majority owner is Alphabet,
Yeah.
and this is a capital intense business, and it's allowed us to sort of go the long haul. But we do have external investors, and so we enjoy a lot of support from all of them, and they know our roadmap, and we have a lot of support. And I know this, here people are like thinking about the ecosystem of being a builder and then having investors who are aligned with you and who can support you on that journey. And I feel very fortunate that we have that.
I mean, yes, you have backers. There is another way to get even more backers, which is go to the public markets. And there is an IPO window that's been opening up. So why not do that?
So we think about, I'll answer the question in two ways. One, I think the reason to go to public markets is to have access to this capital. And I feel very fortunate that we have access to the capital to be able to do that at the optimal time. And that's still our North Star. But at this time, that's not what we're focused on. We're actually just focused on ensuring that we can scale this technology, make the road safer, and continue to have the safety impact that we're having already.
So reading between the lines, to me, that translates to we're okay with losing money. I mean, you're making revenue, but we're okay with losing money in order to scale, that's the priority over profitability right now.
Well, I think we are okay. It is imperative that we scale. Whether or not we're profitable is distinct from how we raise funds. We are really, really fortunate to have strong backers, and we are focused on becoming profitable as a business. Okay. So they're all true, they're just distinct.
Okay. I do also want to talk about how with scale, it doesn't matter, hardware or software, any company that is scaling technology, there are bugs and errors. But with Waymo, or any self-driving vehicle company where people are getting in the vehicle, the stakes are much higher. So what for you, and there's also at the same time been a lot of video that captures any incident that happens, big or small. Probably the most recent one that really caught my eye was an incident with a school bus where Waymo was taking a left-hand turn out of a driveway and the stop sign of a school bus, was up. How is Waymo thinking about how to address these specific incidents and more right now? And has it changed from how you were dealing with these incidents a year ago?
Yeah. So I think the specific incident that you're talking about, that because NHTSA has, is focused on evaluating that circumstance, we're obviously focused on rolling out new software updates to make sure that's addressed. Always, we're focused on getting better. So that's one. But on your question, we've driven over 100 million RO miles, but we had a study at 96 million RO miles. And it's actually been determined that the Waymo driver is 5 times safer than a human driver and 12 times safer than a human driver as it relates to pedestrians. And so, we think it's really important to continue to look at the empirical data around whether or not we're actually improving the safety of the communities in which we drive. And we have to keep getting better at all of the edge cases. And, thankfully in this edge case, we were never, close to or presenting harm to those children. And that's not the standard. The standard is we have to keep getting better. We have to keep improving the system. That should not happen.
So the bar keeps moving up higher, and I'm wondering, crashes may still happen, and there have been crashes, some, Waymo getting hit from behind, for instance. So when you're looking at the data, what is the acceptable incident rate of like a per mile per crash in the minds of Waymo execs?
We don't actually think of it as much as an acceptable rate. Such a high number of the incidents involving Waymos are at extremely low speeds. It's exactly what you just said. It's people running into the back of us. And so knowing that those are not injury-causing incidents, and these are cars running into the back of us. And so we're finding that we have a 90% reduction in the high-severity crashes. That's really important to us. And then an 80% reduction in the crashes that would be injury causing. That's obviously very important to us. So we're looking at the data in the aggregate to understand whether or not we're having the impact of ensuring that roads are made safer, and they are. But we don't really think of it in terms of, how many of these are allowable. We know they're going to happen because our cars are on the road with humans. And unfortunately, right now, the state of the roads and the state of human driving is that there's a lot of deaths and there are a lot of injuries being caused on the roadways. And so that's the unpredictable nature of the environment in which we're operating. And it's the status quo that we're looking to change, right? Like the fact that we're sitting here and we're like, oh yeah, and humans are, at a rate of 40,000, taking each other out in the US and 1.35 million globally, that's sort of the status quo that we're not even talking about, is the thing we really want to change. And by introducing this technology into these communities, we're actually making people think about safety differently and also value safety more.
You talked about low speed crashes, but once you go to the freeways, if something happens, the potential collateral damage is much higher. So is that also one of the reasons why you haven't rolled that out yet, is just the stakes are quite high because of the speed?
The stakes are high. I think across the board, the stakes are high. And I think, to your point, the edge cases are different, right? And so making sure that we really have a good understanding of those. We think of safety as urgent, right? Like making these roads safer. And so when you see us pacing ourselves, it's because we function on this foundation of safety. And we want to have a really high do-say ratio with our riders. We want to be able to do what it is that we're saying we're going to do. And if we can't deliver on that safety promise, then, this is technology for technology's sake.
Mm-hmm. So last night I was at dinner with some tech crunchers, and we got into a pretty heated, fun debate, but a heated one. And it was talking about this issue of, okay, let's just say that self-driving vehicles, Waymo and maybe others, help reduce the number of deaths in the United States every year. We'll talk specifically US, and that's about 45,000 a year or so. And it reduces it. But then there is one crash which is caused by a company, could be Waymo, could be others, in which there's a fatality. And the question, the debate we had was, will society accept that? Will society accept a death potentially caused by a robot? And I'm wondering if you think that they will.
I think that society will. I think the challenge for us is making sure that society has a high enough bar on safety that companies are held to. And so companies should be transparent about their safety record. Companies should publish data about how many crashes are they involved in. We have a safety hub on our website. Everyone can see it. Policymakers can see it. Riders can see it. Community leaders. It's important to recognize it's not going to be perfection, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be accountable for transparency. And so I think, we really worry as a company about those days. We don't say whether, we say when. And we plan for them. And at the same time, we want to be transparent that when I talk about 90% reduction, 5 times safer, 10 times safer, I'm not telling you 100% across the board. And that's really important. And so we have to be in this open and honest dialogue about the fact that we know it's not perfection.
So as part of that open and honest dialogue, if there are maybe not a crash like a fatality, but something as you're scaling, because you're scaling quite quickly, that would cause Waymo to, pardon the pun, pump the brakes, if you will, in terms of the accelerated rate that you are scaling in these cities or, freeways.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's what it means to be a safety first culture. We are always using, whether we're going really slow or really fast, we're always using our same safety framework to determine what is safe enough, are we ready, can we go? And just because we say yes doesn't mean we don't pull back. We pull back all the time. And that's actually something that's been embedded in our culture. I mean, I've been at the company 8.5 years, and for a very long time, it's been very clear anyone can raise their hand and say, wait a minute, I don't understand this, did we? And that's something we all take very seriously. And you can't go back and build that Like that's something that's very foundational to who we are. And so, yes, we do that. We assess because, we're here to make roads safer. And so either we're doing that or we're not. That's the really important question we have to ask ourselves.
Are there any examples that you can give, like in the past, where maybe you were about to, roll out to an expanded area, or during certain inclement weather or something, and someone did raise their hand and said, "This is not. We don't feel comfortable with this." I mean, have there been examples historically where that's happened within Waymo?
Absolutely. We've had examples where, some of them have found their way into the news, where we've done tests and tests and tests with emergency vehicles, sirens, and can we hear them? Do we understand what's happening? And yet we found ourselves blocking some emergency vehicles. Mm-hmm. And that's not okay, right? Like, we're not going to make you safe in a Waymo and make the person unsafe in the emergency vehicle. And so that's something where we had to pull back and really focus on it and really target it and understand what was happening. And is it because, these sirens are blue and red, but those sirens are, green and blue? Like, what is happening here? And making sure that we're delivering on the promises. We say it's not promises, it's performance. And so we need to make sure that the performance is backing what we're saying we're doing.
So I'm a bicyclist, and so bike lanes are a big thing for me. And one thing I've noticed in San Francisco, I haven't seen it so much in Phoenix, probably because there's fewer bike lanes, but the pickup and drop off, the Waymos do go into the bike lane. Mm-hmm. So when is Waymo going to correct that?
I think it's pickup and drop-offs has been from the very beginning one of the biggest challenges. There are places like in Phoenix where in the case of Chandler, where the city council early days said, we're going to give you pickup and drop-off locations. Mm-hmm. Why? Because maybe we have bike lanes, maybe we have whatever it is. And so that obviously makes it much easier than when that doesn't happen. So we're not looking for every municipality to do that, but we are engaged in those conversations around what are we seeing and what could actually make this work better, both for our riders and for the cities.
So what's the solution for San Francisco?
I think it's not a problem everywhere. It's a problem in certain places, and so we're super focused on that. One of the trade-offs we have to make is, you're someone who could, if we pulled to the next block and avoided the bike lane, you could walk. Mm-hmm. Not everyone in the car could take that walk. Right. And so this is part of what we're trying to balance, which is, making sure we get you where you may need to be without knowing all of your, limitations, and using this mobility platform to expand the number of people who can get where they're going safely, and complying with the city laws and sort of the expectations of the community, because sometimes it's not actually the laws, it's just how people behave.
Could you see a scenario in which, based on user profiles, people could put settings as, they're okay with walking and that is a workaround?
I think the more that we're over time learning about people's preferences, the more that we can offer all kinds of products that will start to address not just this, but a host of things that people give us feedback on.
London is on your list. New York City is on your list. New York City is a place where people have very little patience for things that will disrupt their daily life. And
because San Franciscans have tons of patience.
No, but I would almost, you got another laugh. I would almost suggest that New York City might be less patient. Oh. So the stakes are really high, not just on a safety level, but on a disruption level and an acceptance level. You also have the inclement weather piece. So why do you think Waymo is ready? I know you're not regulatory, have the permits yet, but why do you think Waymo is ready for New York City?
I think the way that the Waymo driver sort of improves over time is by tackling bigger and bigger and bigger challenges. And so San Francisco is very different than Phoenix. Los Angeles is very different than San Francisco. I mean, all of these are inputs into the AI of the Waymo driver. And so showing up in New York, obviously, we'll know that we're safe enough to do dense driving, multiple drop-offs, pedestrians, cyclists, sort of the chaos of a city. Mm-hmm. And there will be things that are very unique and specific to New York, and that's why we're there now. That's why we extended our permit so we could continue to learn those things. I think the other question you're asking about weather, we think of weather sort of the way we think about freeways, like it's just a different capability set. And so most of our cities currently don't have the kind of snow that New York has. And so when you see us ready to launch in New York, it's because you can rest assured that we feel like we know how to manage what is ultimately going to be, when it snows and there's like mounds and mounds of snow, the roads are no longer where they were, right? They don't look the same. They don't function the same. You can't see the stop signs anymore. So that kind of complexity is what you'll see us continuing to test until we think we're ready.
So based on that, should we expect at least another year of testing potentially in New York? I mean, you're just getting started there, before you will get to that point where it will be in the minds of Waymo execs safe enough?
I think I don't know exactly how long, and not because I'm being cute and not answering your question, but it's really because one part of being at Waymo is about letting the discovery be the guide. Like, what do you discover that you didn't expect? And then how do you address that? Yeah. And so I don't know yet. But certainly we're super focused on how to do it safely. And I hope that it's faster than that. But will the regulation be ready is the question.
Part of scaling also is different partnerships. I'm really interested in, you have a partnership with Uber. You have one that's coming online with Lyft and Avis. You also have these third-party partnerships with a company called Move. And I'm wondering, on a P&L basis, customer service and safety, looking at all of those, is there a partner or business model that is emerging that makes the most sense on all those, ticking each of those boxes?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing across a host of those, and so just to level set for those of you who don't know, Move and Lyft and Avis will be sort of more fleet operating partners. Lyft obviously also has the opportunity to put Waymo vehicles on their network. That's in Nashville. And then with Uber, we launched in Austin and Atlanta through the Uber app. So this gives us a really clear view. And we have these cities like Los Angeles and San Francisco and eventually Washington, D.C. that are like Waymo markets where we're owning them and we're operating them. So in these early days, we're getting the chance to sort of understand which combination is optimal for the riders, which combination is optimal for addressing any policymaker feedback that we're getting. And so that's what we're in the process of doing right now. You would expect that we're going to start to focus more and more on what we're great at and then partner with people so they can do what they're really great at.
And you just partnered with DoorDash. So is Waymo, and I know that you've had these pilot programs, but this feels different. It's multi-year. Yeah. So is Waymo getting back into delivery? And when are you going to relaunch your self-driving trucks program?
We have stayed in delivery, but as you said, in pilots. And so we just announced this partnership with DoorDash in Phoenix. And what we learned is people will come out of their house to pick up their food. And so that's exciting. People like picking up their food from Waymo. They like that it's a fully electric fleet and there isn't a human they need to interact with or tip. And so all of that is really exciting to understand about the value proposition for people and what they're looking for in these services, like having a fully electric fleet that's being utilized for this reason. And then trucking, we've always said that we're not getting out of trucking for long term. Our business model is the same. We're building a generalizable driver. That driver, through our ride-hailing service, is our first application, then local delivery, then long-haul trucking, and then eventually we will license this technology to automotive companies for personally owned cars. That's always been our sort of roadmap, and it's still our roadmap.
Okay, so roadmap, but can you attach a timeline to that roadmap?
No. Thank you for laughing.
It's just
we got 4 TechCrunch laughs. I just want to say.
It's just, I know, it's it's amazing. I can't believe it. I'm going to see if I can squeeze these in. On the surveillance side, scale means that you have a lot of cameras in a lot of places. And does Waymo say no to government requests for potentially capturing surveillance of potentially a crime or an alleged crime?
If it's overly broad and unlawful, yes.
So you have historically said no to the U.S. government?
Yeah, if it's overly broad and unlawful, yes. Okay. Absolutely.
One of the things you have said, and you said it earlier actually, is that companies trying to make the road safer is a positive thing. So who is on that list, and does it include Tesla?
No. I don't know. Like it's actually goes back to the transparency point. I don't know who's on that list because they're not telling us what's happening with their fleets. And I think there is a responsibility if you're gonna put vehicles on the road and you're gonna remove the driver from behind the wheel and you're gonna have someone in some other room observing the fleet who can take over the vehicles. It is incumbent upon you to be transparent about what's happening. And if you are not being transparent, then it is my view that you are not doing what is necessary in order to actually earn the right to make the road safer.
So based on that definition, is Tesla doing the work? Is it transparent in your view?
What do you think?
That is quite the way to end this. And I will say likely no. So
Okay.
go back, right back at you.
Awesome. Great. I think that checklist, there isn't anyone yet doing it.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.